Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yes. Hello everyone.
Today we're going to be looking at Sean Diddy Combs.
BD.
Yeah, Diddy, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever you want to call him.
So many names, right?
So many names, and I think he's even gone by just Sean Combs now.
He has sort of reinvented himself a few times.
He has, and we're going to see how all that's gone for him in a moment, but we're looking at a YouTube video by Watch Mojo called The Dark and Disturbing Life of Diddy.
Ooh, that sounds a little intense.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the guy's had a really interesting life, but some of it's not so great.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is. How did he go from like the top of the hip hop world to facing all these allegations and criminal charges?
Yeah, it really does seem like this kind of wave pattern of success and controversy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about how his early life might have influenced all of that.
Yeah, like growing up in Harlem, losing his father at a young age.
Yeah, that's a lot for a young person to deal with.
Definitely. But then he goes to Howard University. He has that internship at Uptown Records.
Yeah, and even back then, he was known for throwing those lavish parties.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was his thing. It shows that he was always ambitious, always had that drive to stand out.
Yeah.
Which I guess could be a good thing.
Or it can go the other way.
Yeah, it could definitely have some negative consequences too.
And one of those negative consequences comes up pretty early in his story.
Oh, what's that?
That 1991 City College stampede. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. That was a terrible tragedy.
Yeah, so he organizes this charity basketball game. It draws a huge crowd, way more people than they expected.
Oh, no.
And it results in this deadly crush. 9 people were killed.
That's awful.
Yeah, and it's interesting looking back now because it does kind of foreshadow some of those later problems he has with...
Right, with things maybe getting a little out of control.
Out of control, yeah. And that question of whether he could have prevented it.
Exactly. Was this just a case of bad luck, or were there some warning signs there about how he managed things?
Right. So from there, he goes on to found Bad Boy Records.
That was a huge moment for him.
Yeah, he partners with Biggie Smalls, and they basically reshape the sound of hip-hop in the 90s.
Absolutely.
But then those legal troubles start cropping up alongside all that success.
Yeah, the assaults, the gun case with Jennifer Lopez.
It's almost like the two became intertwined in his story. Can't really separate them.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of what makes his story so fascinating and so troubling at the same time.
It's that constant tension, isn't it?
Right.
The good and the bad kind of battling it out.
Exactly. And then in 1997, everything changes with Biggie Smalls' death.
Oh, man, that was such a huge moment in hip-hop history.
It was a tragedy.
A tragedy, yeah. And it really propelled Diddy into a whole other level of fame.
Especially with that tribute song, I'll Be Missing You. That became a massive hit.
Massive hit?
But do you think maybe that success overshadowed the legal issues he was facing at the time?
It's possible, yeah. And it definitely contributed to that martyr narrative that developed around Biggie.
And by association around Diddy.
Exactly. And that's something we're going to continue to see as we move through his story.
Okay, so as we head into the 2000s, Diddy really starts to build his empire beyond music.
Oh, yeah. He was everywhere, though, Sean John Clark. The acting roles, that whole Ciroc vodka campaign.
He even changed his name a couple more times. P. Diddy, then just Diddy.
He really knew how to reinvent himself, didn't he?
He did, but as his empire grew, so did the controversies surrounding it.
Yeah, those allegations of unfair labor practices with Sean John, the use of real fur in his clothing line.
It brought up some really uncomfortable questions about the ethics of fast fashion and how far people are willing to go for success.
Right, and then there are all those lawsuits that start piling up against him.
Yeah, assault threats, sexual harassment. It seemed like his empire was built on this foundation of alleged misconduct.
And it makes you wonder, at what point do those controversies start to overshadow his accomplishments?
Is it even possible to separate the art from the artist in a case like this?
That's a big question, and it's one we're going to have to keep grappling with as we go deeper into Diddy's story.
It's clear that his journey is a complex one, full of contradictions and tough questions about ambition, success, and the price of fame.
And those questions are going to become even more important as we explore the later parts of his career.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the life of Diddy.
Yeah, picking up where we left off, his story is just full of these intense moments.
It really is.
Like, I keep thinking about that whole East Coast, West Coast rivalry in the 90s.
Oh, man. That was a wild time.
Yeah, and Diddy right in the middle of it.
Oh, absolutely, with Bad Boy Records going head-to-head with Suge Knight and Death Row.
And it wasn't just about music either.
No, it went way beyond that. There were real personal conflicts involved.
Yeah, and tragically, it resulted in the deaths of Tupac and Biggie.
It's hard to believe it's been so many years and those murders are still unsolved.
It is, and it just adds to the whole mystery and the conspiracy theories.
Especially with all the accusations that have come out against Diddy more recently.
Yeah, Tupac's family is still pushing to reopen the investigation into his murder.
Wow. They seem convinced there's a connection to Diddy.
Yeah, and when you look back at some of those key moments in the rivalry, it does make you wonder.
Like that incident at the Source Awards in 1995.
Oh yeah, Suge Knight basically calling out Diddy on stage.
That was a huge escalation of the whole feud.
And then when Tupac got shot in 1994, he publicly accused Diddy of being involved.
That really added fuel to the fire.
And even though Diddy's denied any involvement in either murder,
it's hard to escape the shadow of those events.
Yeah, it all kind of hangs over his whole career.
It's interesting to think about how those events might have shaped public perception of him.
Yeah. Did it create this image of him as somehow untouchable?
Maybe it did, and I think that perception might have contributed to the sense that he could get away with anything.
Which brings us to the other artists who have had public clashes with Diddy.
Oh yeah, there's been quite a few of them.
The Watch Mojo video mentioned Mace, 50 Cent, even Kanye West.
Each of those feuds tells us something different about Diddy.
Like with Mace, it was mostly about music rights and money.
Right. Very much a business dispute.
But with 50 Cent, it's been more personal. A lot of back and forth insults.
Yeah, they really seem to genuinely dislike each other.
And then there's Kanye.
That whole thing with the White Lives Matter shirts.
Yeah, Diddy criticized him publicly, and it sparked this huge argument.
It seemed like Diddy was trying to position himself as a voice of reason.
Right, but then all these accusations against him come out, and it's like...
the tables have turned.
Exactly, the spotlight's now on him, and it reveals this pattern of behavior that's been going on for years.
And it's not just the high-profile feuds either. There are lots of stories about Diddy mistreating people he worked with.
Like his former personal chef, Cindy Retta, who sued him for sexual harassment and unpaid wages.
And Little Rod Jones, who worked on his recent album.
Oh man, that lawsuit is wild.
Yeah, he claims Diddy threatened to eat his face.
If that's true, that's seriously disturbing.
It definitely paints a picture of Diddy as someone who uses intimidation to get what he wants.
And then there's that 1999 assault case where he attacked Steve Stout with a champagne bottle.
That's right. And don't forget the nightclub shooting with Jennifer Lopez.
All these incidents together, it paints a pretty clear picture of a pattern of anger and aggression.
It makes you wonder if he's ever really been held accountable for his actions.
It seems like he's been able to operate with a certain level of impunity for a long time.
And that raises questions about the role of wealth and power in shielding people from consequences.
Did Diddy's fame and fortune protect him from facing the repercussions of his actions?
It's certainly a possibility, and it also makes us think about the role of the media.
Did they maybe turn a blind eye to some of his behavior because he was so successful?
Or did they just focus on the positive aspects of his story and ignore the warning signs?
These are all important questions to consider as we try to make sense of his legacy.
Because at the end of the day, Diddy's story is about more than just music. It's about power, fame, and the potential for those things to corrupt.
And in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore the fallout from these recent accusations and what they mean for Diddy's future,
as well as the broader implications for the music industry as a whole.
All right, so here we are, the final part of our deep dive into Diddy.
Yeah, after all we've discussed about his rise and those controversies, what happens now? What does the future hold for him?
Right, like will he actually face any real consequences for these accusations?
I mean, looking at it right now, he's got those multiple lawsuits and the criminal charges. Remember those racketeering, sex trafficking, assault?
Yeah, it's a lot, and these cases could drag on for years.
They could. It's going to be a long and complicated process.
And even if he somehow manages to avoid jail time...
his reputation has already taken a huge hit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with that mountain of accusations and that CCTV footage...
it's hard to imagine him coming back from that.
And it seems like the music industry is finally starting to distance itself from him, too.
Yeah, I've heard rumors about projects being put on hold, artists not wanting to work with him.
It really does feel like a reckoning.
Not just for Diddy, but maybe for the whole industry.
Yeah, it's like this is part of a bigger cultural shift we're seeing.
Right. Powerful men being held accountable in a way they haven't been before.
And the music industry is no exception.
The hashtag #MeToo movement has really empowered victims to come forward.
And there's just less tolerance now for this kind of behavior, no matter how rich or famous you are.
It's a good thing it's about time, really.
Diddy's story, though, it really highlights how power and influence...
they can be used for good or for bad.
And how crucial it is to hold people in positions of authority accountable.
We have to call out these abuses of power.
And as fans and consumers, maybe we need to look in the mirror a bit, too.
What do you mean?
Well, did we ignore those warning signs about Diddy because we were blinded by his success?
That's a good question. Were we too quick to celebrate him without considering the full picture?
It's something to think about, for sure.
So moving forward, do you think real change is possible in the music industry?
I think it has to be. I mean, these conversations we're having now,
About abuse, exploitation, power dynamics.
they're so important,
And we're seeing more artists speaking out, demanding better treatment.
especially women.
Yeah, and there's a growing awareness that systemic change is needed.
It's not just about individual bad actors.
Right. Labels, managers, producers, they all need to create safe environments for artists.
Zero tolerance for any kind of abuse.
And it's not enough to just cancel people. We have to get to the root of the problem.
Build a culture of respect and accountability.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Diddy's story, it's definitely a cautionary tale.
But it can also be a catalyst for positive change.
If anything good comes out of this, it's that it's forced us to confront these issues.
And hopefully it'll lead to a more just and equitable music industry.
One where everyone feels safe and respected.
That's the goal.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the rise and fall of Sean Diddy Combs.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. Thanks for joining us, and we hope this has given you something to think about.
Remember, don't be afraid to question those in power and always speak truth to authority.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, everyone, for listening.